She is the president of the A. Philip Randolph Institute of Orlando and Central Florida. A. Philip Randolph was a very influential labor leader. He was the first black trade unionist to be on the executive board of the National AFL-CIO. He was instrumental, one of the main movers behind the 1963 March on Washington. Please welcome Phyllis Hancock.
Okay, I'll be 5 minutes because I didn't write a speech and I had my eyes dilated and I can't see what the so I want to thank Jim for inviting me and staying on me so long. I am the president of the Central Florida chapter of the A. Philip Randolph Institute. In the event that you don't know who the A. Philip Randolph is, I love opportunities to tell you that A. Philip Randolph was the person who was instrumental in organizing the March on Washington in 1963. It is the same march in which Martin Luther King gave the famous "I Have a Dream" speech, but he did not organize that march. It was A. Philip Randolph, along with Bayard Rustin, who organized that march. And A. Philip Randolph was the first African American as executive vice president of the AFL. Wasn't CIO yet, hadn't joined yet. And I had the opportunity. A. Philip Randolph also organized the Pullman Car Porters, which was the first black union that the AFL-CIO brought in. They were worked under trained, they were servicemen, and they were very dignified men. They dressed very well. They, once they were organized, they got much better wages. They were treated with a whole lot more respect on the job, and that is what the labor movement was about. The labor movement is still about that. I want to remind people always with the labor movement that the AFL-CIO are the people, we are the ones who brought you the weekend. We are the people who got you overtime. We are the people who got you premium pay for working at night and on weekends, particularly Sunday. So often you hear a negative twist of the AFL-CIO, there's people that strike. A strike is a last resort in negotiations. A great deal takes place before we get to a point of strike. And with that in mind, I recently have been a part of the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, which I, along with some adults in our chapter, as well as 5 students, we took with us to the march. And it's so important that we realize that the march 50 years ago in 1963 was, and I hope Lorraine will be able to get up a photo of the button that they wore back then, how different it was 50 years ago, and how much we're still the same today. And in relationship specifically to the TPP, the March on Washington was for jobs and freedom, specifically for black people at the time. You want to say Negro, whatever the label, black people. African American, whatever, okay? But that's what the focus was about, jobs and freedom. Now, I have here that I want to share with you. I do have a program, by the way, get this stuff off the internet, of what it looked like as they marched on the Lincoln Memorial, in which there was 250, there was a lot of people there. You ever realize how big that march was back then? There was 250,000 people on the Lincoln Memorial. And guess what? I'd like you to watch the video about A. Philip Randolph for Jobs and Freedom so that you can see what happened and how that took place. And there's one about Bayard Rustin as well. Bayard Rustin was considered, was a communist. He was in the Communist Party, and he was also gay. And J. Edgar Hoover governor made a point and tried to put the focus on that to try to deter this march from happening. And Mayor Rustin stepped back in order so that focus wouldn't be there, so the focus would be on the march. How noble of him. So there's so many things that I keep in consideration all the time. Our organization target inequities and injustices in the Black community. And with that, we have to deal with the gay issue. We have to deal with the job issue, which right now, look at the unemployment rate. What group is mostly affected by that unemployment? But African Americans. We have a saying in the community where the last one's hired and the first one's fired. So when you look at the program, back in the day, what the demands were, you get the right sheet. I'll tell you if you're quick because I can't see the sheet. 1, comprehensive and effective civil rights legislation for present Congress without compromise or filibuster to guarantee all Americans access to all public accommodations, decent housing, adequate and integrated education, the right to vote. Well, if the TPP is having meetings behind closed doors, we don't get the education, then how can we vote properly? Because our representatives, if they're going to fast track this thing through them, who will be able to talk to our representatives to tell them our position on this? So they fought for this in 1963. Look how it's affecting us with TPP. Okay? Withholding of federal funds from all programs in which discrimination exists. Huh? Isn't that what they're doing? Aren't they using funds for all this stuff? Desegregation of all school districts in 1963. Enforcement of the Fourth Amendment, reducing congressional representation of states where citizens are disenfranchised. Well, we've been disenfranchised again. That we don't get to them, we tell them what we think. How can we talk to them educated when they're behind closed doors? We don't know the facts, we don't know the terms of this. We won't, because African Americans are the last ones to get to their representative due to all of these economic roadblocks in their way. So this put us at a further disadvantage to get to our representatives. 5, a new executive order banning discrimination in all housing supported by federal funds. Authority of the Attorney General to institute injunction suits of any congressional right violated. A massive federal program to train and place all unemployed workers, Negro and white, on meaningful and dignified jobs and decent wages. So if you're going to throw all the jobs out of the country, where will we be then? We're already at the bottom. Okay? They got rid of like $700,000 with the manufacturing jobs. So unskilled workers, those are unskilled worker jobs a lot of times. That's African Americans. That's jobs we lost us. Not disproportionately in manufacturing jobs now that it was Black. That was like across the whole board. But now you're going to take service jobs. That's where we are. Okay? All right. Then a National Minimum Wage Act that will give all Americans a decent standard of living. This is funny. Government surveys show that anything less than $2 an hour fails to do this. 1963. The Law and Fair Labor Standards Act to include all areas of employment which are presently excluded. Fair labor standards. Well, how can they enforce that? Their jobs are overseas. You want fair labor standards here in our country for our people, right? Can they enforce that in another country? Okay. A Federal Fair Employment Practice Act barring discrimination of federal, state, municipal governments and employees, contractors, employment agencies, and trade unions. Do you realize that trade unions help build the black middle class? They are the primary reason there's a black middle class. So yes, I'm a proud union member. I'm a new member of CW, Communication Workers of America. This is my local hall, in which I'm a member. I believe in labor. I'm a second generation laborer. The 2013 March on Washington, what's the talking points? Jobs and economy. TPP, take more jobs out of this country? How's that gonna help us? And we feel helpless. Unemployment's high. We got double digits in unemployment. And guess what? Youth, all races, unemployment is nearly 6 times higher than what African Americans are. So the targets is African Americans and youth they're gonna hurt the most in this. Voting rights was the second thing this year. Well, still a problem, right? Worker rights. We in labor believe in a living wage, not a minimum wage. Does everybody understand what a living wage is? We believe you should be able to work one job and be able to take care of your family. You shouldn't have to work 2, 3 jobs. And that's happening a lot among us now. And then what happens? That takes away from your family, the development of your children, your relationships. Keep your relationships together. One job, like the rich people, then they can stay married, they can raise their children, they can send their children to college, but we won't be able to. Criminal justice issues, like stand your ground and gun violence. Do I need to say more? Something just happened right up the road. Sanford, Florida. Oh, but there's some good news about that. Did y'all know that the lady in Jacksonville that was accused of the warning shot back in court? Because how can you give her 20 years for a warning shot after someone, her husband, abused her and she wanted her kids, trying to save her kids as well? And she fires a warning shot, she got 20 years. What was standing ground then? Different standard? If a black person have a gun, it's a different law. An innocent boy who was unarmed, was killed by an adult, a Sanford. Just because out of some feeling of prejudice, that because he's in the neighborhood, he must be doing something wrong. Okay, I don't want to go too further. I get mad. Women's rights. African Americans have been greatly affected by that because, well, thank God for the Lily Ledbetter, who is now looking at us getting the same pay for the same work. That's most important in the African American community because statistics show that most African American families are led by females. They have a doctor in the household. If there's not proper income into the household, then the family suffers. So we believe in women's rights strongly in my community. Immigration. What can I say? Immigration is a major problem. It affects the black community, the Haitian community, the Jamaican community, the Caribbean, Trinidadians. They're having problems. Same problems as all other communities. So we're greatly affected by that. Again, the LGBT equality. The Bear Buster was living today. Did he ever get credit for the work he does? Did he do it? Did he organize something? Did he was successful? Environmental justice. I'm so happy that Jeannie Thomas is here because from the time I've known her, she opened my eyes to so many things about the environment. Right there in Apopka, they're having some of the same problems in Apopka that they talk about nationally. and African Americans are really affected by these environmental issues because we have a high degree of asthma. So I had some statistics here that said in Los Angeles, African Americans are twice likely to die of heat wave. 68% of African Americans live within 30 miles of a coal plant, and it creates instances of asthma. Now, another minority group, Latino children are twice as likely to die from an asthma attack as non-Latino children. That's not good either. So, and the youth. Now, we talked about how the youth are being affected with college loans and all that stuff. They go and do the right thing. They're on the path to doing everything right to live the American dream. When they finish college, if they don't get a job, they can't pay their student loan. They're going to ruin their credit. They don't want to hire you. You got a bad credit rating, y'all. All these things, and they're going to take the jobs we have left here, and they want to ship some more out. And maybe you say, well, that's not for certain. Well, the fear is there based on that. That's exactly what they did. And they are targeting service jobs. So what else? Because there's not a lot of jobs now, sectors left, when they take away the service jobs, because that's where they've been pushing this country into the service jobs. So it is important for us to know 50 years ago, approximately the same problems today. And then with TPP, it's going to be worse for us economically. And our organization is about social justice and economic justice. So I can't support this Trans-Pacific Partnership, specifically when I can't see what's going on. I want to know how we're going to be affected by these trade deals. Everything in me tells me it's going to be negative. Thank you so much.